I made a huge mistake during my bachelor party trip. My fiancé moved on, and I just want her back. Part 1. 5 years ago, I, Walt 28M, made a choice that royally fucked up my life. I had a lot going for me. At the time, I was the new guy at my firm. I was an architect, mostly subdivisions, and really enjoying it. I had a long-term girlfriend of 3 years, Emily 29F now, 24 then, that I had recently become engaged to. I really thought nothing could derail me. After Emily said yes, we began to plan the wedding. We were not up for the big wedding thing. We agreed we would have an elopement to a coastal city. San Diego became the plan. Parents' dark siblings were welcome to come if they wanted, but basically we were just booking a honeymoon and getting married while we were there. Since this whole trip was going to be, relatively speaking, inexpensive, we decided to splurge on pre-wedding activities. Now, neither of us wanted traditional bachelorette parties. We agreed we would scratch off bucket list items. Emily wanted to swim with sharks and booked herself one of those cage dive excursions. Her and her best friend Maggie went to Florida for a long weekend and did just that. Mine was quite a bit more. I had always wanted to visit Thailand. It was one of those dumb things I got fascinated with as a 10-year-old and swore I was going to go. Emily actually encouraged me, pointing out that I literally brought up Thailand on our first date. We were 6 months into our engagement when the time came for me and my best friend, Jorge, to leave on the trip. For the first 3 days, everything was great. We were enjoying beaches, visiting temples, and a lot of drinking. On that third night, though, Jorge got absolutely smashed drunk. I was a little pissed about this and tried to slow him down. The next day, we were supposed to go on a jungle excursion. It was one of the things I was most looking forward to, so I had been pacing myself so I could enjoy the trek. The next morning, Jorge has a world-class hangover, refused to get up at all, and says we can book an excursion tomorrow. My thought was, fuck that, I'm going today. I had seen ads for a few places that did these. I went out to get some breakfast and spotted a guy on the side of road offering the jungle excursion cheap. He had a Jeep, and when he noticed me looking at his sign, moved in with the hard sell. Honestly, it did look a little shady, but the guy spoke English so well it gave me a false sense of security. I decided to go with this guy. I get in, and for a while it's actually pretty fun. He pulls off the main road on these off-road paths. I have no idea where we are going. We end up deep down these roads. I'm enjoying it for the most part, though. Then everything went sideways. We stopped in this small clearing, and I was checking some things out, when out of nowhere, local law enforcement pulls up. I don't know what's being said. I can only pick out a word here and a word there. They start going through the guy's Jeep and find a rather large quantity of methamphetamine. I am shitting a brick at this point. These cops take us both into their small, middle-of-nowhere station. This is when I come to realization that this motherfucker has taken me into Cambodia. I don't have my ID or passport on me. They are back in the room. These cops are not listening to anything, and I have no idea what my guide is telling them. I was freaking out, but also thought, it'll be okay. Jorge will realize I'm gone. Look into where I am. I'm not going to go into what the next 4.5 years were like, but hell is an easy comparison. I'll just leave it at a Cambodian jail isn't the most hospitable environment. It took 5 months of sitting in that cell before I even saw a judge. The judicial system there is so backlogged, and the few public defenders that exist are basically in the large cities only. During this whole time, I was never allowed to contact anyone on the outside. My first time in front of the judge, they didn't have an interpreter, and it got postponed another 5 months. I finally had that pretrial hearing, entered a plea, then it was another 14 months before my actual hearing. When I finally had me hearing, the judge was very fair and dismissed my charges on time served, only for the prosecutor to appeal the dismissal. This put me back into custody for another 28 months. This was the most devastating moment of my life, to think I was out and end up still in for that long.
I made a huge mistake during my bachelor party trip. My fiancé moved on, and I just want her back. Part 2. During this time, after no one came for me, I realized they all thought I was dead. I had gone missing. Jorge had no idea where I was. I had called back home the morning I was arrested and left messages, but they only knew I was going on a jungle excursion. My parents, my fiancé, I missed them so much. There were plenty of days I was hoping one of the other inmates or a rough guard would just take me out already, especially after the first year when I became more tolerant of the food and water. Finally, after 52 months in captivity, I was released. I had nothing to my name and was in a country I wasn't supposed to be in. I contacted the embassy and they did have a missing persons file for me. They helped me contact home. I attempted to contact my fiancé, but a guy named Mitch answered and he did not know an Emily. So I figured she must have changed her number at some point. I called my mother. She was absolutely frantic. She grabbed my father and I told her my entire tale. I kept asking about Emily and my mother kept deflecting. She wanted to get started immediately getting me home and said we would talk about everything when I got back to the US. It took a little while to make this happen. My parents luckily had my original passport and ID, which made the process somewhat faster. During that time, they sent me money and I was able to get a hotel. My parents were very adamant I not try to contact Emily during this time and to wait until we got back. I obviously started to assume she had moved on and was with someone else, which was heartbreaking. I had held out hope during my imprisonment that she would not, but with the way my parents were acting, I assumed that was the case. Even so, I wanted to contact her immediately, before anything else. I didn't want to talk about my time there. I didn't want to talk about what they did trying to find me or know anything about anyone else. I just wanted my fiancé. My parents sat me down and handed me a save-the-date card. It was Emily and some tall, handsome guy I'd never seen before. She was engaged. I broke down. It wasn't unexpected, but the feelings were still there. I asked my parents if they had kept in touch with her beyond just being wedding guest worthy. They said yes, they've actually been a huge part of each other's lives these last few years. I was a little shocked. I know they liked Emily, but with me gone, I had somewhat expected them to drift apart, not get closer. I decided to ask, so how close are you guys now? My mother responded, very. Her father passed a year ago and your dad has agreed to walk her down the aisle. That hurt. It shouldn't, but it did. Why you? Was all I could say. My mum got emotional, started going on about how they all thought I was gone, that a cartel or something got me, that they looked so hard and so long. They had a whole memorial service for me. I snapped a little. I don't care about that right now. What are you not telling me? My mother took that tablet and flipped a few photos. She then handed it back to me. There was a whole group photo. My parents, Emily, her fiancé, her mum, my sister, my brother, Emily's brother, Jorge, other friends and kids. But at the center of the table was a boy sitting behind a birthday cake. The decorations read, "Happy 4th birthday." He was smiling big. I just looked at my parents. My mother looked at me and said, "That's your son, Paul," my dad's name, Walter, my name, Ryan, our last name.